Hey, what's up? Hello everyone, welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl, and today we are continuing these pre-fall film festival predictions, but let's not waste any time. Dive into what we have today, and I guess I'll kick us off with Best Director. How does that sound to you?
Oh, that sounds perfect, Dylan. Take us away.
Just like everyone, I have joined the Christopher Nolan Oppenheimer Best Director train. All the hype around this movie is about how much of an artistic vision it came from Nolan. A lot of people are saying this is not just his best in a few years, the best directing work he's done in his career. This just feels like it's his time. This movie could still lose Best Picture, and I think he could still win this and maybe clean sweep the season as a whole.
Absolutely. Even if the film does not win Best Picture, as I don't really think it will, even though I have it at number one, this one seems so safe for a number one Best Director, because we always see this type of movie come second place for Best Picture. I think back to Jane Campion, Power of the Dog. It's the same type of directing achievement. Alfonso Cuarón, Roma. Alfonso Cuarón, Gravity. This one just feels like a directing winner, though. Christopher Nolan, he is going to get his Oscar for this movie.
Hopefully I'm not being overzealous here, but the only way I can really see him losing at the moment is if we have a 2021 situation where Denis Villeneuve just gets snubbed. And I know he was not the front runner for that category, but in that same sense of like, oh, it's going to win all these techs and you don't nominate the person who led the scene. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's like the only way I can see him not really like winning unless our number two emerges as our winner, and that is Martin Scorsese for Killers of the Flower Moon. This movie has been seen. It came out at Cannes. A lot of people said it was great. They just didn't say it was the best of his career, but it's one where I could see the case, especially since it will have a resurgence when it comes out later this year. And if there are some delays like Dune, like Color Purple, this will probably be the biggest movie to come out for the rest of the year in terms of the Oscar race, in terms of the box office as well. It's Scorsese. We know he's going to be great. Irishman, Silence. Scorsese recently has been pretty friendly with the Academy, with Wall Street nomination, Irishman nomination. He missed for Silence, but Silence was its own separate thing. Killers won't be that this year. And honestly, Killers seems like the most friendly movie of the three in terms of overall awards, at least. And the last person I have in win contention for the moment is Jonathan Glazer for The Zone of Interest. While I don't think it's a very high possibility, he seems like the likely BAFTA winner. Yes, Nolan makes sense, but also Glazer makes a little bit more sense, at least at the moment. And I feel like he's someone who could hit every stop along the way, not winning a lot, but he's always there. Think back to Todd Field last year for Tar. Did he win a lot? No, but he was always there, and I feel like Glazer could kind of fill that role this year.
To talk about Scorsese first, I agree he's win competitive. I think he's Steven Spielberg for The Fabelmans, where really the narrative around giving Scorsese an award is, oh, he's a legend, we gotta give him another award. And that just doesn't really hold up anymore. That type of narrative is not the one that really succeeds. So I don't see Scorsese being the winner here. Jonathan Glazer, I can see the avenue where he wins BAFTA, but I don't think he will. And the reason for that is that it's an experimental movie. It would be so weird and alienating for that to win. I see it going this way. I think BAFTA is going to give Best Picture and Best Director to Oppenheimer. I think they're going to go all out. BAFTA has a terrible track record with Best Picture, so if Oppenheimer wins at the BAFTA, it probably won't win at the Oscars.
That's part of the reason why I think BAFTA could double Zone of Interest, but also that's just on the weird off chance that Oppenheimer is just not a sweeper, like what we're both kind of predicting it in this category for the moment. At number 4 is where I get to some of my question marks for this category. Right now, if I had to say, barring this movie being delayed, I think the Academy will reward Denis Villeneuve for Dune Part 2 at this moment. Yes, I know they snubbed him for the first one. Yes, I know James Cameron missed last year for Way of Water. Tragic stuff. However, I feel like Part 2 for Dune will be a little bit more well-received than Way of Water was last year. It will hit more of those technical nominations. Yes, it almost won all of them last time and he got missed, but I feel like people will remember that. The first movie was a lot more world-building. It was a lot more reliant on the script and the production design to really engross you into the world, while this movie, you know the world. Now let's go crazy with some fight scenes, with expanding the world, which I feel like goes more into the director's vision. So that's why I have him at my number 4. Then at number 5 is where I have made a big switch. I know previously in our Discord, which if you want to join, link down below, have said Greta Gerwig's no chance she's getting for Barbie, but Barbie is setting the world on fire, and I'm going to put her in at my number 5. Do I feel great about it? No, because this movie is not very much on the director's side, it's on the writer's side in terms of its vision, but she's still doing a lot here. But I still do see a chance where this is, as you mentioned on the episode yesterday, Top Gun Maverick just misses director, just like Maverick did when we thought Maverick was in for director and IDGA.
I don't think that Barbie would miss director, because the difference with Top Gun and this is that Top Gun is not a director-heavy movie. That movie...
This isn't either.
I think it is. It's so flashy and colorful and out there. The difference here is that when people look at who the author of Top Gun Maverick is, no one says Joseph Kosinski. Everyone's like, that's a Tom Cruise movie. This is not a Margot Robbie movie. This is a Greta Gerwig movie. Greta Gerwig is the reason this sold. She is the directing force that people are talking about. Not only that, she is the first woman to direct a billion-dollar movie solo, but that to me says there would be outrage if Greta Gerwig did not get in. I think she's number 3, if not number 2 for Best Director. Also because that movie's winning adapted screenplay, probably. I don't know, we'll have to see what you say about that a little bit later. But if it is win competitive in adapted screenplay or original screenplay, depending on where it's placed, it's top 3 for Best Picture. And at that point, it's in Best Director.
Definitely see the point you're going for. I don't know, this seems like the most obvious possible snub they could do, because if you look at every year, there's always a director snub. And at least to me,
Denis Villeneuve.
Yeah, but that
they did it last time. They can do it again.
It seems too obvious.
Maybe it is too obvious.
They did it last time with Gerwig too, I guess.
But the only argument for Denis Villeneuve making it in here, in my opinion, is that he missed last time. And I don't think directors are going to go, oh, well, we have to give it to him this time because he didn't get it last time. Obviously, the film looks visually like a step up from the first one. I could see him getting a nomination, but at the same time, this is not the type of movie that gets directing nominations anymore. It used to be. 10 years ago, this is the type of movie Dune would have absolutely swept Best Director. Now, they don't quite go for that as much. I don't know if I see him getting in for this when he didn't get in for the first one.
You may notice from when we had these predictions last time, I went for director 2 months ago. You see, there's 2 people no longer in my top 5. Celine Song, Past Lives, Blitz for The Color Purple. I'm a lot lower on both these movies than I was last time. They're both teetering on the bottom half of my Best Picture instead of being on my top half. I could see a resurgence for both of these movies and both of these directors. I'm not seeing it at the moment, but who knows? Come critics season, Celine Song could sweep the critics groups. I don't think that would happen, but could get back up into the director's race via that way, and Color Purple comes out, and it is everything that Matt was talking about earlier in the year. It is this technical achievement, a bold new vision, but I'm going to be more on the passive side, and I also don't think Warner Brothers is going to have 3 of the 5 Best Director slots, so I kind of had to take someone out. Other people in line, Yorgos Lanthimos, Poor Things, Justine Triet for Anatomy of a Fall, David Fincher, The Killer. I feel like these were all hit with a certain group, more of the international director's flair. It's just, can they survive while Glazer's also in the lineup, while Nolan's also there, Scorsese's also there? More directors that will appeal to the more international voting side. I don't see them taking up all 5 slots. I could see 3 slots, but all 5 seems a little bit of a stretch. Anatomy of a Fall becomes a strong Best Picture player? Yeah, why not? Poor Things is getting every technical nomination. Yorgos come back for round 2. David Fincher, The Killer, usually of his movies in picture, he comes along too, but this is a different type of movie than his more usual picture contenders. There's other people on the list here. I know that you will mention Alexander Payne, Emerald Fennell. I don't have either of their movies in picture, so for me, that would be a stretch to put them in my 10. I don't have Fincher in picture at the moment, and I think I have the other 9 there. So 9 of my 10 Best Picture nominees are represented in this list here, and I'm trying to think what my other one is. I'm blanking at the moment. Oh, it's May December with Todd Haynes. I don't think if that's even a picture player, he's in the conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Todd Haynes is really in the conversation at all. Justine Triet, again, if the film ends up being an original screenplay contender, watch out for her. Yorgos Lanthimos is a great pick, and if that movie ends up being big, it is going to be huge with directors. That could be a major player. That could knock out Denis Villeneuve, in my opinion, or even Jonathan Glazer.
I was going to say the same thing.
Imagine Scorsese misses.
The only way I could see that happen is if there's some sort of tonal disconnect with general audiences in this movie, but I don't see that happening because that didn't come out of Cannes. But I guess it could make sense because you could say, why would Denis Villeneuve miss for Dune? And he did.
That's the type of thing where it could be a completely random snub. But otherwise, I would say Alexander Payne should at least be in your top 10. I know you don't have the film in Best Picture though, so it makes sense. But just keep in mind that Alexander Payne has gotten 3 Best Director nominations. And even though his films are not flashy, they're not directing heavy, they very much connect with a certain type of directing Academy member. They nominated him for Sideways, for The Descendants, and for Nebraska. Does The Holdovers look as visually kind of interesting as something like Nebraska? No, which might be why he won't make it in. At the moment, I do have him in my top 5. I think that if The Holdovers is big, if it is a major Best Picture contender, if it wins the People's Choice Award, then this has to be a directing nomination because, again, they just love him in the directing branch. He does not miss. Otherwise, Emerald Fennell, yes, in Saltburn, she is one to watch out for because this film looks visually absolutely masterful. That said, I don't know if the film will be a big contender, and honestly, I'd say if it gets one nomination, it's more likely to be screenplay than it is director. Otherwise, maybe Bradley Cooper and Maestro?
That's another one that's just next on my list. It's just, I want Venice reactions before I either go all in or keep on the outside of Maestro, because like we talked about before, but if you are new here, we do most of our predictions not in a vacuum. It is every category makes sense for the other category. So if you're looking at one category, like, why don't you have this here? It's probably because we don't have it in other places where, yeah, maybe Cooper makes sense to be in your 10, but if you don't have Maestro and picture and your only nominations are actor and makeup, it doesn't really make sense for it to be in that upper echelon of the category. But you just mentioned films like The Holdovers, Anatomy of a Fall, Past Lives, Saltburn. Those are all original movies. So let's go into the original screenplay category. And we have different number ones, but we have the same number 2, which I think is really looking good for a possible upset.
Oh, it sure is. So at number 1, I have The Holdovers. This one just feels like an original screenplay winner to me, more than Past Lives does. Past Lives seems like the presumed frontrunner there. It looks like it has a women talking trajectory where it might just end up being picture and screenplay if it gets into picture. At this point, I think I just have it in screenplay and actress and nothing else. Also, the screenplay is very minimal. It's not the type of movie that I feel like wins screenplay a lot. A lot of dialogue, but it's not entirely a dialogue-driven movie. It's also not a plot-driven movie. Not a ton happens in this movie. It's very low-key and very subtle. That, to me, doesn't feel like an original screenplay winner. That's why The Holdovers is my number 1. It's a comedy. It seems to be riffing on some old 80s tropes of John Hughes movies. It seems to be emotional and have a really strong core to it. And if it wins TIFF People's Choice Award, I do think that this could be a strong contender for the win here. But like you said, at number 2, we both have Anatomy of a Fall. And this one could be a big upset, especially if The Holdovers is not good. Anatomy of a Fall, I think, goes straight up to number 1. And the reason for that is it's a crowd pleaser. It is a twisty, turny, mystery courtroom drama that has stuff to love for the artsy crowd, right? It won the Cannes Palme d'Or, so that means that the artsy crowd loves this movie, but it's also a crowd pleaser. It's got people on the edge of their seats. It's got twists and turns that'll captivate people. I always refer to this as like, it's a very artsy airport paperback novel. That to me feels like something that could become a number 1. And at number 4, I think you'll be glad to hear, Dylan, I still have Air in my top 5. This is one place that I think it could just get a solo nomination. Original screenplay isn't very strong this year, if I'm being completely honest. This is not a very deep lineup, and Air is one of the stronger contenders. Not only is this a really good screenplay that is a fun comedy that'll get a Golden Globe nomination, this one also has the narrative of the way that this was a first screenplay that Ben Affleck bought, he rewrote, and then he said to the guy, hey, I'm giving you full credit. I know that we completely rewrote your script, but I know how important it is to be given your shot, to be given full credit here. This is not a you and Ben Affleck movie. This is a you movie. That could be a huge, huge motivation for people to nominate this screenwriter. At number 5, I have Saltburn. And at the moment, I'm starting to think Saltburn might be Glass Onion, in that it's very well received. It has a great leading performance that people love. And at the end, it just gets screenplay, like Glass Onion did. It's a thriller that's set in the mid-2000s to a soundtrack of early 2000s bangers. Could be a screenplay nominee, especially if it's a dark comedy, as it apparently is.
The Glass Onion comparison's a good one, but I also think another comparison you made to this yesterday is If Beale Street Could Talk, which is a movie that got adapted screenplay as well as a tech or two. And while I don't think Saltburn will get in score, we saw some photos. Production design looks pretty good. The cinematography looks good. Maybe costumes could be another solo representee, so it could be like a double nominee movie, while Air is still our sole 1 nomination in the screenplay category. But I like your 5. I have 4 of the same 5. I have Saltburn on the outside looking in, while your number 6 is currently my number 4.
I was going to say, let me guess you have May December because you've got it in Best Picture. So May December, the way I feel about this one is that I'm hearing a lot of people who are seeing it just feeling underwhelmed by it, and that I think will come back to the screenplay. It takes place over the course of like 3 days. It's just about an actress studying a couple and some of the revelations that come from that. Now, that screenplay is fantastic. I have read it. I have not seen the movie. I loved this script. From the reactions I'm hearing from people that are just underwhelmed by the movie, it seems like the screenplay is the reason why. I don't know if I can have it in there, especially since I have it dropping in every category. Maybe Next Best Picture was right, and this just is not a contender at all. Number 7, I have Asteroid City. I could see a world where this has a major resurgence. Imagine it comes back in production design, score, and then maybe screenplay. This could really end up getting a good package. I don't think it will, because it didn't get great critical reception, especially in comparison to the Grand Budapest Hotel or some of the previous films that Wes Anderson has had. Wes Anderson has gotten screenplay nominations in the past. Before he got his Best Picture nomination for the Grand Budapest Hotel, he had the Royal Tenenbaums. Maybe this could be like a Royal Tenenbaums type thing, where it just gets a screenplay nomination and not much else outside of that. Following that up, I have Maestro, which I haven't heard great things about the script, so I'm not confident in that one, but maybe the movie's a bigger contender than we're giving it credit for, and it could. Then, The Boy and the Heron. There's an argument for Miyazaki ending up having a narrative to be a really big contender here. It's getting a mixed response in Japan, though, which is a bit worrisome. This would need a big critics push, which I don't think it will get. Then, number 10, Rustin. Dustin Lance Black wrote this. He wrote Milk as well. He doesn't have a great track record. He is a previous Oscar winner in the screenplay category, though, which is worth noting. But this looks like it's just going to be a pretty average, by-the-books biopic. I'm not convinced by this one. What are some other ones I've got on the outside? Well, at number 11 at the moment, I have Priscilla. It's possible, especially if it's a big contender in other categories coming out of Venice. Maybe this is A24's second push. I don't know about that, though. Number 12, I have About Dry Grasses. This is a big international contender, has a great screenplay, and possibly could be a Drive My Car level push later on in the year. I don't see happening, but there is a universe where it does happen. This is the funny one. At number 13, Sound of Freedom.
Oh,
Sound
yeah.
of Freedom could end up being a thing. I don't know what to tell you. It just could. It really could. I don't think it would in screenplay, but I could see some other categories where people just really go all hoorah in. But yeah, screenplay, I'd say if we see this at WGA, I don't know if it's eligible, but if it is, it could get a WGA nom, which would be fucking nuts. Be crazy. And then just to finish off my 15 here, I got The Royal Hotel and then The Creator. I don't know enough about either of these movies. I don't think they'll get in, but they could, maybe.
I think the most fun thing with original screenplay is if Maestro's a lot better than we think it is.
Yeah.
Bradley Cooper could get 4 more nominations this year and lose all 4 for picture, director, actor, and screenplay.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, you're right. Damn.
But a category where he cannot lose is adapted screenplay this year, which I will take. And I know you'll see the list pop up next to me. Oppenheimer, it's not at 1. You're surprised. Yeah. But is Oppenheimer going to win picture, director, actor, and screenplay? A clean sweep above the line? No, it could, but are we going to have that 2 years in a row? Probably not. I think a very strong competitor is Killers of the Flower Moon. Yes, it's going for the same argument. Yes, Barbie is right there too. I think all 3 of these movies have a very strong shot to win. I just see Killers having a very strong resurgence once it comes out later in the year. Barbenheimer may cool off a little bit when we get towards the later parts of the year. Killers would be the fresher movie, the more buzzy movie, the talked about movie, and then we get to the televised awards. I think that's when the real battle begins. Will it be Killers? Will it be Oppenheimer? Will it be Barbie? I would say it's like a 33% chance for each of these movies at the moment, and then like everything else is like at a 1% chance. I feel very confident saying our winner is one of these 3. It's just which one at the moment. And I can't be mad if you say any of these. I get the argument for all. I'm leaning Killers at the moment, but Barbie has a great case. Oppenheimer has a tremendous case. Just, I don't see Oppenheimer winning the big 3.
I'm a little shook that you have Killers at number 1. I'm gonna be honest with you, man. Couple things. Frontrunner fatigue, I think, is going to hit Killers even harder than it hits Oppie. The thing that's going to happen is people are going to kind of forget about Oppie when Killers comes out in October, and that's going to have fresh frontrunner fatigue. Whereas Oppie might die out a little bit, come back up. If we talk about a resurgence, there's no resurgence for Killers of the Flower Moon. The movie's only been screened 1 time. If there is a resurgence for anything, it's Oppenheimer. What I think is going to happen is Killers is going to come out, everyone's going to go, this is winning Best Picture, this is winning Best Picture, oh my god, put it in your Best Picture. Oppenheimer will be kind of forgotten about, and then, like, by the Globes, Killers is going to be dead. If you're saying that there is going to be a large amount of wins, why not go for a sweep for Oppie? If they go director, picture, you might as well put it in screenplay if you don't have Barbie. But here's my case for Barbie, and here's why I think Barbie is unbeatable. In the past few years, screenplay wins have drifted away from stuff like Oppenheimer, like Killers of the Flower Moon. Those are the very traditional stories. They're dramatic biopic stories, historical retellings, and a big shift we've seen in the past 5 to 10 years in the screenplay categories is originality is rewarded a lot. When you look at specifically the original screenplay category, less adapted, but still you can see it in both. If you look at lineups where you have a traditional script up against something that's a little bit more different, a little bit fresh, a little bit exciting, the exciting film usually wins, the one that's unique, that's fresh. Even think back to 2019, Little Women versus Jojo Rabbit. One of those is an adaptation of a classic novel that is just a very good story told well. The other one is a movie about a kid whose imaginary best friend is Hitler. One of those movies is a lot more original than the other, and Barbie has originality on its side. This is a film that takes what could be a generic toy commercial and it turns it into a musical fantasia that's reminiscent of Vincente Minnelli, that's reminiscent of cult classics from the 70s, 80s, 90s. It's got all of these things. It's got hilarious dialogue. They do like comedies in these screenplay categories too. Honestly, I think the screenplay is a huge selling point of what elevated Barbie from where it was to what it became.
No, I get it. Like I said, all three of these movies are very even for me at the moment. As we go further in the season, one will definitely emerge for me. Those three, safe. Nominations, count them in, win competitive. 4, 5, 6, they're battling for the last 2 spots for me. We have Dune Part 2, we have Zone of Interest, we have Poor Things. I have all three of these in Best Picture. Dune gets pushed to next year. It makes my life so much easier, but currently it is still here. Who knows? By the time this video is out, we may have confirmation. I've made my case before for Zone of Interest and adapted. Yes, I know it's not the most obvious one, but I think they will love this movie across the board, and I think they will over-nominate, which will help it in its Best Picture package. Dune Part 2, the first one got in, the second one, why not? Poor Things, I think, could be the spoiler for it. I know there's the case like, oh, Lord of the Rings, Avatar, they missed as well, but from everything I've heard from people, the part they're adapting from Dune this time is the more hard part to adapt. So I feel like if they nail this part, writers will be like, okay, you did the unthinkable. Here you go. Here's your win is the nomination sort of thing. Poor Things, if it's very strong in picture, it overtakes one, if not both of these, and becomes our number 4, maybe even number 3 in the totem pole. I know you're going to have an argument for Across the Spider-Verse, but I think everything you just said from Barbie takes that away from Across the Spider-Verse, and it will not have a package love to get in there throughout the season.
Doesn't mean it can't get nominated. It just means it can't win.
Yeah, I just don't see the people who are going to vote for Across the Spider-Verse not just voting for Barbie in terms of the nominations. I feel like you're going to pack Barbie's going to be more beloved across the board, and then those people are not going to be as strong, where like people who may have that extra 4 or 5 so like, okay, yeah, here's a nomination to Barbie over Across the Spider-Verse.
I don't know, man. I really think that Spider-Verse and Barbie have 2 very different audiences, even though they may be very similarly loved and may target sort of the same vibe of very original storytelling. I don't think that they're really comparable in terms of who is going to be putting them at the top of their ballots. Now, I'm going to tackle Zone of Interest here. I won't talk about Dune. I don't think Dune's getting nominated here, but I will talk Zone of Interest. I'm gonna keep saying over and over, man, it may be an across-the-board nominee. It is not getting nominated in screenplay. This movie does not have a plot. This movie does not really have strong characters. This movie is a directing achievement, not a screenplay achievement, because it's an experimental film. Giving this a nomination in adapted screenplay would be like giving a museum piece a screenplay nomination. Like, it is not a movie about that writing. It is about the direction, it is about the craft of the film, it's about the idea of what the movie is saying, but the lack of story, the lack of plot, the lack of character is really going to hurt this film on a writing standpoint. It could be one of the best films of the year. People are going to acknowledge, yeah, this is not a screenplay thing. It's the opposite side of the coin from something like Mad Max Fury Road, where Mad Max Fury Road was, obviously there's a lot of plot in that. There's a lot of stuff going on, but there's not much story, and there's not much dialogue. And everyone can kind of just admit, Mad Max Fury Road is an amazing movie. It's just not doing as much. And that's the Zone of Interest. But on the other end, because Mad Max was doing so much, it was just maximalist filmmaking, Zone of Interest is on the other side.
I mean, you make great points there. Like I've mentioned, I'm going to stick out with Zone of Interest, Dune Part 2, until I hear more buzz. Once we lay eyes on this movie's, Zone of Interest is just one. I know it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense in my head. And I'm just going to, like, keep rolling with it. So after Spider-Verse at number 7, my number 8 is The Killer, David Fincher. If this is a Best Picture player, I feel like it kind of needs to be an adapted. I don't have it in picture at the moment, but it's one of those where I feel like could pop up here and there. Color Purple doesn't really make sense to make it in. I know West Side Story missed. I don't see how Color Purple would make it in, but it is top 10 because it still has a chance to win Best Picture. And then that closes out with my number 10, which is a dumb one, but it makes sense, and that is Dumb Money. I know there's times where they're like, hey, movie very much not liked by people, but hey, let's throw it in. Don't Look Up is a great example. Don't Look Up made it in a picture. Screenplay came along and almost won Screenplay. I don't think Dumb Money's that strong, but if it does muster its way into like a TIFF People's Choice top 3, it becomes Sony's main dog in the Oscar race. It sneaks its way in. Screenplay would have to come along with it. Am I predicting that? No, but there's a shot for it.
I'm cool with you having Color Purple in your top 10. I think it's close to top 5, but Dumb Money, I don't know, man. It looks not great, and I think it's just gonna flop in the box office. It's just gonna flop overall. But some ones that you didn't mention here that might be worth mentioning. For one thing, if we're talking a dumb, fun movie that might be overhated, Next Goal Wins. That's the one that if they give a screenplay nomination to any stupid movie, it might be that one. I don't think that'll happen, but it would be worth putting in your top 10 or just outside of it. Also worth mentioning are a couple of festival films, All of Us Strangers, which is Searchlight's other movie. If Poor Things does not happen, then maybe Strangers would happen. It will have a very good screenplay. I very much feel confident in that. Also, American Fiction is coming to TIFF. It sounds really fascinating from the description of the book that it's based on, so that might be one to watch out for, but we don't know much about that one yet. As well, Naiad, The Bike Riders, I don't see those being contenders, but they might be very low tier and worth maybe mentioning or considering. And finally, a little indie, Blackberry could be a contender. I don't know. And I guess Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret could have a bit of a resurgence when we get to some critics groups, but I think this category is way too deep this year to reach back to something like Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
Yeah, I think if Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret would be a contender. An original possibly, but it's adapted. Like you said, it's way too deep here. I like some of your shouts here. American Fiction's one I could see the case for, waiting for its TIFF premiere. Good buzz. Yeah, Dumb Money, go away. Color Purple, move down. There's space for it. But I want to thank all of you for tuning into today's episode. We talked director, we talked screenplay, and you're like, normally you talk picture with these as well. Well, if you missed it, we talked about that yesterday. Matt went through his number 1 all the way down through number 36. There were so many movies there, and really great insight from him, as well as a little chit chat in between. So if you missed that, consider dropping subscription so you don't miss any of these going forward, because next week we are talking acting updates post Barbenheimer. I know we did that last time, but we've had a month to sit with these now. Is Murphy still my number 1? Is Robert Downey Jr. rising up? Margot Robbie, Best Actress? Maybe. Tune in next week to find out. But until then, my name is Dyl.
And my name is Matt, and this is Fantasy Filmball.